be just Chaya Srivatsa, your regular host on It's My Life. Who's my guest? Let me tell you a little about my guest before I reveal who she is. I think way back in the 80s, I was watching television and there was this stunning looking lady who came on screen to as MC of the Festival of India. And of course, at that time, there was only Doordarshan, black and white. But even in black and white, she looked so stunning. I sat glued to the television for, I think, a whole week it was, listening to everything, because I was also an MC for cultural programs in Mumbai. And I found her style so fascinating. I found her style so freewheeling, so natural, extempore. And I said, oh my God, she's my guru. She was my first guru, frankly. And I have no hesitation in declaring that openly. And a couple of months later, I was working in Taj Hotels. And just behind me, I heard the familiar voice. Hi, I'm Anita. I'm around here. I couldn't believe my ears. I turned around and I saw her. I quickly ran home and called her at a hotel because she had revealed which hotel she was staying in. And I said, can I please have an interview with you? Because I was a freelance journalist. And she said, okay. And I went and met her and I did the interview. Next thing I know, she invites me to her studio in New York to write scripts for her. मेरी बाग खुल गई. I always wanted to go abroad, but not this way. This came as a manna from heaven. Okay, now I have to tell you who she is. She is Anita Ratnam. When she called me, she was Anita Raj. Now she's Anita Ratnam. She belongs to one of the most successful business houses in Chennai. But Anita is a very, very multifarious, multidimensional, multi-talented lady. She was running her own television station way back in the 80s in New York, Broadway. Her studio was in Broadway. I'm going to let Anita tell her story herself because coming from her, it's much more interesting than my saying it. So welcome to It's My Life, Anita.
Thank you, Chaya.
I am so honored, honestly, to be sitting and interviewing you.
I'm thrilled. As you said, technology to see great ho. I'd never thought that after 27 years we would connect and we would be sitting here because I still remember those days. Mm-hmm. Bombay Taj and in New York.
Yes.
And all the highs and lows that we experienced at that point. Yes.
Tell us about Bombay Cinema.
Well, Cinema was the show and Bombay Broadcasting Network was the company. It was something that my ex-husband, Giriraj, started because he always wanted to have a television channel. And I had a master's in television production. Mm-hmm. One of the very, very few Indian women qualified. In fact, Chaya, I can reveal to you that I was India's very, very first ever person that the Reserve Bank allowed to go officially to study television masters, because they were only releasing funds for business and engineering and those things.
Sure.
It was a kind of the first ever time that they would release precious foreign exchange at that time for arts, which they thought was an arts course. Mm-hmm. Anyway, that's long story short.
So you went to the US to study?
I went to the US to study masters. I had a choice of studying at the Martha Graham School of Contemporary Dance or studying television and theatre. But I had a fairly successful career as a classical dancer in Madras before I went.
As a dancer. Let's start with your being a dancer. Okay. So whom did you study under, Chennai?
Well, as a dancer, as a Bharatanatyam dancer, I studied first under Guru Raji Narayan, who now lives in Bombay. Mm-hmm. When she left, she conducted my Arangetram, which in those days, I was 9 years old and I danced at my mama's wedding reception because it was the done thing at that time to have a classical dance performance at wedding receptions at now a defunct marriage hall in Madras called Abbotsbury, which has since been toned down. Mm-hmm. And after that, I was transferred to Adayar K. Lakshman, who was a Kalakshetra alumni. And so at age 21, here I was sort of bristling with restlessness. I didn't want to be controlled by my mother, who was sort of planning my career. And she said, why don't you go study at the Martha Graham School of Contemporary Dance? And anything my mother said, I would say no.
It's not changed.
so I had that kind of restlessness. I admired her, and yet I wanted to be free of her. So there was the other option is to study television and theatre. And I always felt that if you dance and you reach 500 people or 700 people or maybe 1,000 through television, which was still in India just Doordarshan, as you had mentioned, you could reach 100,000 people.
Yeah.
So why not
in their drawing room?
Why not put that effort into having a wider audience?
Okay.
So I went off to the University of New Orleans because they accepted me. You know, in those days, we didn't have a 4-year degree because we had pre-university and then we had a 3-year degree.
3-year degree course,
and the United States still wanted 4 years of undergraduate college. So fortunately, all my years of dancing, my diploma from Kalakshetra as well as a diplôme supérieur from the Alliance Française, all sort of came in and they added that 1 year.
A cumulative
one, and they allowed me to join a master's. It was a terrific program. So from New Orleans, I went to New York because my sister was working at the United Nations at that time. Otherwise, I wouldn't have gone to New York. There's somebody there. And it was at that time that I met my husband.
Okay.
And he was looking to start a television show. He was already involved in Hindi movies and distributing of the films. And so it was like, you know, something ideal, serendipitous almost. So Cinema was started because we were looking at a first generation immigrant population, primarily North Indian and Hindi speaking.
Absolutely.
And certainly cinema was the binding force. We've got to realize that it was a time in which VHS tapes were the norm.
Yes.
And videotapes were still sort of few and far, you know. Technology.
Beta camera, right?
The
Betas, yeah.
And you're talking of 1980, 1981.
Yes.
Where maybe many of your listeners were not even born. So let's really go back those years.
Okay.
So Cinema was also for me a trial by fire because I didn't grow up in Madras watching Hindi movies. I didn't. Of course, you know, we used to get the occasional Rajesh Khanna and all those movies, but it was not something that I longed for and I had sleepless nights about and all those things. So although I had, thank God, learned Hindi as a second language in school so I could read and write.
Okay, that's unusual though.
And my practical parents decided that...
See, your mom good
absolutely, because she was brought up all her life in North India.
Oh, okay.
So only when she married my father did she come down to the south, and she had a really hard time learning Tamil. So that was different. So that little smattering of Hindi plus my eagerness to make it work, I just also learned about Hindi cinema in piecing together this show.
Okay.
So much before Chaya Geet that used to be and Chitrahar that used to come on DD, I devised a thematic show every week using the songs to string together themes with smart English narration inspired by the television anchors of that time, Barbara Walters and the news anchors. Remember, this is much before Oprah Winfrey.
Totally, yes. Nobody had heard about her.
Exactly. So there we were beaming into people's drawing rooms on Saturday mornings, living rooms, bedrooms.
And the Indians craved for this.
And the Indians craved for this, you know, because the weekends are so precious in the United States. And it was a good time because it was the start of the weekend. So all the grocery walas and sari walas and appliance walas and whoever were the small mom and pop businesses found it was a great time to advertise their weekend sales. Yeah. So it was almost as if the community grew, our program grew, we grew. And I got to know a lot of people by first names, got to know when they were expecting their children, when they moved from one house to the other. And we really were like a large family that grew up. Okay. I remember when Sunil Dutt had brought Nargis Dutt for cancer treatment at the Sloan Kettering. We did a whole telethon, like a drive for the Nargis Dutt Foundation that was launched at that time. So the television program became a kind of a window, not just for Indian cinema and entertainment, but gradually grew to include news and other kinds of information as the community was maturing.
And you were driving all this yourself?
I was driving all this with my experience as from my master's degree. So I'd learned camera, I'd learned how to write, I learned how to host and, think on my feet, run around with the camera handheld, create your loops and everything. So it was a wonderful time. I don't think, Chaya, if you ask me to work that hard, I don't think I could, because I think I worked like 20 hours, 20
yeah,
hour
but you were
days.
20, so it was okay.
Yeah. In your early 20s, you're really
have so much
foolish
more
and you're very
energy.
brave. And,
Yeah.
Absolutely. And New York is a great city
Oh, yes.
to, get your feet wet and really sink your teeth into what you really call life. So those were 10 incredible years. And the Festival of India came right in the program started in 1981. The Festival of India fell into our laps in 1985.
Yes.
Yes.
And that was such a remarkable, totally different kind of a program, isn't it? We don't have that anymore.
Well, for me,
Doordarshan, for all its bureaucracy, blah, 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 this was a very innovative idea of this.
again, it was a time where one person in Doordarshan, Shashikant Kapoor, just decided that he had to, because it was Mrs. Gandhi's mandate that Rajiv Gandhi was carrying forward. It was her idea for the Festivals of India with Pupul Jaikar.
Okay, yeah.
So they wanted wonderful coverage. They had missed the coverage for the Festival of India in the UK in 1982. So when the US was being planned, they had already wanted to send a crew from India. Then they realized, since it was going to be spread over 18 months, that they couldn't afford to keep a crew. So they just found us, and we were ready.
Okay.
So here there was the Director General just said, we need you to send us 18 capsules. And we'll tell you some of the important things, but the rest you pick. So this is where my experience came in with my young team. And we crisscrossed the country. I was pregnant with my daughter at that time. I remember throwing up on the side in the first 3 months. And
What we women can do, Anita. Don't you agree?
We are incredible.
Yes, we are.
And I was the first kind of test case because everybody else was young and unmarried. So here I was, a pregnant woman, and the other women in the
But
crew
you
were
didn't
saying-
look pregnant at all on the screen.
I didn't show for a long time.
Yeah.
Plus, I had very cooperative cameramen who sort of said,
The
we'll
right
shoot you above the
angles.
waist. Yes. I think only when I was in the 7th and 8th month, I didn't travel. But until then, I worked and I had such incredible energy. But the piecing together of it, the interviews, the pacing of it, the editing, how much to show information, culture, history, and what came from my training. And also from my constant watching the other channels in America. There was a saying that even God doesn't get more than 7 minutes because you shouldn't have talking heads for more than that. Of course, that time frame has now collapsed to even shorter.
Totally.
But it was a fantastic time, Chaya. That's when I met you. And because of the Festival of India, my face and voice and likeness was beamed back to India.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And for the first time, let me tell you, my parents said, what are you doing working in television? You're a classical dancer. The minute it was beamed back in India and their phone started ringing, they suddenly realized, okay, Anita's doing something.
Something which is worth watching. It was really good. I mean, it was put together so well. And I think, okay, one thing is that was the only channel to watch. And that was the only meaningful program also to watch, other than how to grow potatoes and things like that, or having the
Farmer's Almanac, something,
Yeah.
yes.
No, it was. I mean,
Yes.
I still say hats off to Doordarshan for initiating the whole process in India, isn't it?
Yes, I think so.
And today, whatever others have come in, a whole lot of them, they're all Me Too rants. But the Neil Armstrong is definitely Doordarshan.
What's really heartening, Chaya, is that I travel and people come up to me and said, as people in their 20s and 25s, you made my life miserable. I said, okay, what did I do? I wanted to watch cartoons on Saturday morning. My parents wouldn't allow me to watch cartoons. They were watching your show.
It wasn't really your show, it was India's show.
Yes,
which you
it was.
presented in such a, let's say, viewable way. If you know what I'm talking about.
Well, I've always wanted to do the best that I can in the most professional way and to always try to raise the bar. Raise the bar
For yourself.
For myself, and also because I've always felt that we as a people are so talented, but we sometimes fear excellence. We don't want to reach for excellence. This chalta hai attitude somehow interferes and we somehow descend into some kind of muddled mediocrity with a lot of our efforts.
That's also
So-
because, I don't know if I'm right, It's also because your consumer is also not expecting much from you, isn't it? Where you did, the consumer's bar was high.
I think so, because I was always told, by some intellectuals and academics that the best kind of speeches are those that are only poised and pitched at 15% above the audience's level. Don't go over their heads, because then they'll feel alienated. Don't talk down to them, and don't pander to the front benchers. Always set your bar slightly higher. Let them reach and let them grow. So that's what I tried to do.
You had a lot of these, because you ran cinema, you had a lot of well-known stars coming in, staying with you as your guest. You want to share some anecdotes about that?
Well, I think the most favorite has to be Devanand.
Yeah.
Because he was just so endearing, and he was shooting his film. So it was a wonderful time, because he and my husband got very close. He would always insist on staying at the Hyatt, which was above the Grand Central Station. He was such a gentleman. But he would spend so many hours in the apartment talking. And quite honestly, in all the times that we spent together and dined, I don't think I've ever seen him eat.
Really?
He would be so charming. There would be some piece of chicken on his plate, but he'd sort of play around with it and push it around. And, we, of course, I would be wrapped, and then I'd find out that I would have finished. We would have all finished around him, but he would have still just, toying with a salad.
That's why he kept so trim and...
Devanand was an amazing person. One very interesting story was the Pakistani actress Salma Agha. Salma Agha, I don't know if...
she came here to India. She did that movie, no? Nikah.
Nikah, and then one other.
Yeah.
There was one movie that she became such a hit,
That Nikah.
Obviously, she had a boyfriend who was pursuing her and wanted to imprison her and enslave her.
Oh my God.
So it was one of those things. I was at one of the department stores, and she just came up to me, and I recognized her, of course, because I was hosting cinema. And she said, can you, I'm new in the city, and do you have some time for a cup of coffee? So I thought, okay, here she is, the sensation. Let me just maybe take her out for a cup of coffee. Maybe I'll get an interview out of it. Something about me perhaps clicked for her. And in 15 minutes, she was telling me that she was running away from this multimillionaire who had brought her to New York. And in the next 2 hours, she was in my apartment hiding out.
Oh, really? Okay.
So it was. These are all these kinds of
dangerous. Must have been.
Well, the point was, here was a woman, and I've always had that, that the smartest and the most beautiful of women sometimes make some really foolish
Wrong choices, yeah.
And I did help her. We did end up being able to help her. And likewise, the show generated a lot of interest amongst the community. The community was growing. We also had some very unpleasant instances. Remember, it was the time of the Punjab unrest, 84.
Yes.
So our program almost mirrored all the events that were happening. And I remember when Raj Kapoor was a guest of honor for the Independence Day parade, he was receiving death threats not to walk.
Really?
Oh, yes.
Okay.
And it was that time. There was a lot of bad feeling. I remember, because I was the honorary MC every year, being the television presenter. And one year, demonstrators attacked the podium. They jumped onto the podium and damaged it and broke it. And somebody actually caught hold of my hair to actually, I think, try to harm me or pull me off.
Oh, my God.
And I thought, okay, is this any way to really get hurt on India's Independence Day? And then almost
this was the Khalistan.
Yes, the 84.
84, yeah.
84, 85. And they had come in hordes and hordes by that time and filled Madison Avenue. But then, like a movie, there were about 40 young men who jumped up on the dais shouting, Jai Swaminarayan, and they sort of engaged in a fist to fist, and they saved me. So in a sense, even though I was 10,000 miles away from India, I almost sensed closer than perhaps my family living in Madras about all these incidents that were going on, all the ferment. Because
so it is very true, isn't it, Anita, to say that it is a small world. things don't happen in isolation. It really touches the life of even ordinary people
Absolutely.
in these kind of ways.
In these kinds of ways.
Yeah.
And it percolates. Sometimes it could be like a little fungus and a virus that, percolates and infects people. And places that you want to go for peace become sort of the crucibles
Conflict
of spreading
area.
hate.
Yeah.
So, and that hasn't gone away. We are seeing it still in our lives.
But how did you handle it? You were pretty young at the time. And
So the whole thing about looks, I think, is quite peripheral, because I think what New York did for me, Chaya, is it really made me a whole person. It confronted me with all its harshness, it's the severity of just surviving,
yeah.
making things happen, coming in on deadlines, working with people, honing my interpersonal skills, communication skills. Fortunately, my husband refused to pamper me, sort of said, learn, threw me out there. It was a wonderful growing up experience, which I feel I will not trade for anything, and which has really shaped the professional in me. That has stood me instead as I did almost like a volte-face, and after this very successful television career, decided to give it all up when my marriage faltered, and to come back to India with 2 young children. So when I came back to the dance world, which was pretty feudal and still a mom and pop kind of operation.
why did you not think of coming back to the television world? Because
Well,
by that time, India had picked up a little,
Yes,
right?
we had started. I opened the South India Bureau for the Plus channel, which was run by Amit Khanna. Ran it for about 4 years.
Okay.
But remember, it was still those monthly video cassettes that were going out. NDTV had not quite launched. And there was one thing that I was clear about, Chaya. My children were very young. My son was 3 weeks old when I stepped out of my marriage.
Wow.
My daughter was 2.5.
Okay.
So my instinct was as a mother, not as a professional woman.
Yes.
I said, if I was going to leave New York City and come back to India, I wanted to be in a city where I felt safe, where my children would be safe, and I would not have to worry for at least 1.5 years until
Next
I figured
meal.
out what I wanted to do.
Yeah.
So I needed to be with my family.
Totally.
And I'm glad I made the decision, because I was offered very interesting positions in Delhi and Bombay, but I did not want to transplant.
So a woman's instinct is always protective to children, right?
I agree, because I ask myself, and I even tell my children now who are old enough, that if I didn't have children, I would have probably not come back to India, because the offers to stay and start something else, money was being thrown at me.
Yeah, naturally.
Do this, do this, do this, we'll give you this, we'll give you that. But the children actually helped me, without knowing it, to make the decision that I did. So as you said very rightly, I leaned back. Came back to family, and I wanted to, my mother and father have always said, try to be the first one on the moon, because nobody remembers the name of the second. So I know that I had made a mark in what I did completely, out of my hard work. Nobody cared about who my father was and my mother was,
they
and
don't know
nobody.
those things.
And America really asked you, who are you?
Yeah.
You're not Mrs. Somebody. Who are you? That itself was...
And what can you bring to the table?
Exactly.
That's it. But didn't you ever think of coming and joining the family business, because it's such a widespread business in
No, I
Chennai?
think that kind of manufacturing, engineering, automobile, that kind of business.
This is the TVS family,
Yes.
right? Yeah.
And required a different kind of a mindset. I think that I was too much of a loner. I was too much of a self-starter. And my ideas, my love of history and mythology and performance and images and imagery may have been suited for advertising, but not necessarily in the manufacturing industry.
Be it administration or marketing or anything.
It's possible. My brother and sister were in the business. I never really expressed an interest to be in the business. And quite honestly, let me tell you, my father never brought me up even thinking that I could be in the business.
Okay.
So that could also have been there. But what I didn't want to do is, my father said, no matter what has happened, every experience, good or bad, becomes an experience.
Of course.
So for you to come back to India, now how are you going to put the experience that you've had in media and your interest in the arts together?
All right.
So that was really my platform.
So in a way, his being a very successful businessman, he saw you as He made a little business plan for your life.
Yes, but the business plan that he wanted to make for me was to start a dance school, which I didn't want to do.
Okay.
Because the dance school becomes a business model
Again.
where you have to sit down with that wooden stick and go, te-ya, te-ya, te. I didn't want to do that. And I was in a city that already had 500 dance schools. So why would I want to be the 501st?
Yeah.
And I couldn't go back to being the submissive, obedient classical dancer that I was because my life had changed so much.
And you had also brought in some new wave into the dance pattern, right?
Well, my thinking had changed so much. So I really had to find a way to make my life synthesize with my art. And that was not easy. For several years, I floundered. I tried this and that. I got roasted by the critics who said, why can't you just go back and do a Bharatanatyam? Why can't you do a Varnam? What is this she's trying to do? Looks like Kathakali. That looks like Mohiniyattam. This looks like nothing at all.
Fusion makes it. Yeah,
but I was sort of, I have enough stubbornness. I hope the right amount and not too much. But to say that something was convincing me, no, I have to find something. I have to find it. One of the things I did was listen to my father and started the foundation. So I laid the business structure for my artistic practice.
Okay.
So I created a trust, which was going to be like a crucible. And I brought my management experience, which came from learning and running the television program. And I brought out the first book called Nartaki, which was a handheld directory.
Okay.
The first ever it's like a dance directory. And I remember when it came out in 92, it was under the auspices of the trust called Arangam Trust.
Okay.
And trying to compile phone numbers at the time, we're talking of only fax being available at that time. Listeners, remember there was no emails and no computers and no handhelds, all phone calls. So the first book came out, it was sold out immediately. It had 2,000 addresses. The next book came out in 5 years when phone numbers had started changing.
Eight digits and
8 digits and emails had started coming.
Okay.
I don't remember if you ever know that we had emails that had A Ratnam at vsnl.net.in.
and everything, yeah.
Correct. We had long emails.
Yes.
So emails started coming. And then I decided technology was going to be the way. So now it's nartaki.com and it's the largest presence of Indian dance on the web.
On the web. Okay.
14 years old. So synthesizing business experience
But
with my
is
artistic...
this all a revenue module?
This is not on a revenue module at all. And I've not even sought to make it a revenue model. It breaks even and pays its bills.
Okay.
Yeah?
That's revenue anyway.
Yeah, it breaks even and pays its bills. We're just 3 people running it. And I didn't seek to expand it too much because, quite honestly, the world of music and dance in India, dancers and musicians who actually are the content of it, are highly resistant to being members and contributing.
I think they're all very individualistic. They're very proprietary about their own space. And no?
But fortunately, because of the net, our first bank of visitors and viewers were the NRIs. Even more than the Indians. So, of course, nartaki.com is a different story. But coming back to Arangam, I said, I'm bored to be alone on stage. I don't want to be the solo person. Let me organize festivals. Let me organize events. Let me bring dance and theatre together, modern and the neoclassical and the classical together. So that's why over the last 20 years, I've done several festivals, including India's first only annual contemporary arts festival called The Other Festival, which I ran for 9 years, from 1998 to 2007.
And the dancers were willing to come for these things?
Yeah, not classical dancers.
Okay.
But there was so much...
The new generation.
There was always... India is bristling with talent and ideas.
You have to just see the reality shows to realize.
Yes. It's just so much. And even that has changed. I mean, our cities now have become so difficult with traffic that we have to find where are the pockets of this really serious audience. And we, in a sense, have to go to them. So we started going to the software companies and having afternoon performances. Yes. afternoon performances.
sense.
I started using my creative storytelling, narrative abilities as a communicator to sort of give models to middle management, about teamwork and team building.
Okay, you're using art for HR. We were talking about your dance, contemporary. Today things have changed and all that. And you are in Bangalore right now to have a workshop for this kind of dance, right?
Yes, I'm auditioning in Bangalore, which incidentally I have to tell you has got so many great dancers. And I'm auditioning for a new production based on the concept of the lotus. Yes, which is really an Asian metaphor. And I auditioned both in Madras and Bangalore. You'll be surprised to know that not a single dancer in Chennai applied. And 20 people in Bangalore applied.
Okay.
That automatically shows a kind of willingness to be part of something new in this city. I've loved Bangalore because I've grown up here and every holiday with my grandparents who lived on 11th Cross in Malleshwaram.
Really? Okay.
Yes. And at the time, only Commercial Street and Brigade Road were there. It's not the Bangalore. I don't recognize the Bangalore of
The
today.
malls and all that, no.
I don't, but it's still a great city to visit. So that's what brings me to Bangalore. And I'm hoping that I will come for phase 2 of the development
Okay.
and perhaps the premiere as well sometime next
It's going
year.
to be here.
Well, I'm hoping to premiere it here in the city. And then, of course, Madras. It will be very nice. So that's really why I'm here at this point. Plus, of course, I've got lovely friends. And
Now I'm going to come back to your personal
Yes.
life. Is it okay?
yes,
Okay. Now, when you came back from the United States, this is way back in the 80s,
90 I came back.
90. Chennai is a fairly conservative place, and you belong to a well-known family and traditional family. How did they take it? You're coming with 2 children, leaving your husband.
It was very interesting. I have to really admire my parents who just put a protective cordon around me and said, we're not going to ask you any questions. We're not going to ask you to now get married again or anything like that. But just remember one thing. If you are clear about the decision you made, and if you go out and you are very confident and you're calm, nobody is going to ask you. Nobody's going to say, you poor thing, you poor thing.
Yeah.
So the same people who now are very surprised that I've made what I have made of my life, that I have made a space for my voice to be heard nationally about the arts, that I serve on several national committees, and I continue to write and blog and have a life that every day is different.
Okay.
But I also have to thank the fact that my father and my mother realized that I was going to be an individualistic kind of a person, and they gave me the financial infrastructure to maintain the independence.
Lovely. Okay.
Because I think that is very vital. I think we can talk in idealistic terms on and on about what you want to do.
So you're not a sob story kind of a person. You
I-
are lucky to have had parents who have made you financially independent.
Financially and also emotionally independent, to sort
Yeah.
of say that, people don't like whiners.
Even parents don't like whiners.
Yeah, nobody likes whiners. You go out there with a sad face and you want to start complaining about so-and-so, and you become a drag.
Yeah.
You become a bore. People should want to be around you. People should want to feel that your energy is positive, that there is something that, they must want to be around and near you. And that's what my mother especially always said.
Rebuild your life.
Rebuild it. Don't make the same mistakes twice. If
Okay.
you'll always make mistakes, but make new ones.
Okay. And learn from them.
Yes.
But tell me, Anita, as a single parent,
For the last 24 years.
yes, do your children ask you anything about it? Do you have to explain to them or justify to them or, anything?
Not anymore. I think when they were growing up, I was a little concerned that would they be the only children of a divorced family.
Family, yeah.
But no, in their class they had 2 others. And the other 2, the parents who were in Madras were having the most public, nasty disagreements. And I was almost thankful that my children were spared that.
Yeah.
And because the rest of my family stepped up and co-parented for me, and they had cousins who grew up with them in the same class and the same age, I think they were buffeted a lot, sort of, buffered, sorry.
Correct.
Later, I think they were a little saying, my mother doesn't go to a regular office, so what does she actually do?
Okay.
But they've grown out and grown through that, and both my children now have creative lives. My daughter is a novelist with her first novel, working on her second. My son is a film director, film major graduate, So in a sense, they're both storytellers of their own
Yeah.
and seeking to just, start their lives. So they also need to know, like I told them, that they have to have a very strong core because these are quite lonely lives, lonely professions.
Yeah.
So to be able to to know that friends around them who go into economics and business management and the financial sector
The
other things,
conformists.
the conformists will get married and talk about husbands and children, and maybe they will feel left out of conversations. And that's the time where they have to find that core. So whatever the core is, I always tell my children, you'll have to find a spiritual practice. That spiritual practice is not about religion,
Yeah.
but it's that time for you yourself. Do you want to do it with music? Do you want to do it with sports? Do you want to do it with adventure sports? Do you want to do it with pottery? But it has to be you and something else. That doesn't have to be,
You connect with that.
you have to
and
be
that
connected.
becomes your companion.
And that will anchor you.
Yeah. You, as a woman, at a very prime age, you became alone. And you have been like that for the last 20 years. As a woman, how do you feel?
I think one of the things that I gave up was that personal space. For a woman, the need to be touched and hugged.
That's what I meant.
And,
okay.
but I also felt that there was a certain time, there's a certain energy you have as a parent. You have a certain energy towards the work, which for me was the art and the imagination and all that, because it's a 24/7, it's not a punching clock thing. The third time that I needed was for myself. And I think I could only divide myself 3 ways. And if I had to let another person into my life, I would have to give up that my time.
Yeah.
And I think
And you need to
I'm-
have a kindred soul to understand
Yes.
your different ways and things like
Yes. So if I was not going to meet somebody who understood that, better not to have the wrong person just around you.
that. Okay. You haven't so far met anyone.
No.
That's a problem, Anita. When somebody is so self-driven, somebody is so self-sufficient, it's very difficult to find a partner who is in sync with that.
I suppose so,
You
because a
think
lot
so?
of people want to impress you with toys and gifts. Will you get swayed by a new watch or a new designer thing or a holiday somewhere? And if you're not, then how do you? And what you're looking for is a really nice intellect. Somebody stimulating to have discussion with, to talk about books and music. But maybe that's also an altruistic thought. And so there. I'm still a work in progress, Chaya.
Yeah.
I'm still evolving, and we're all living healthier and longer. So who knows what the future will bring. For now, life is terrific.
It's a lovely question mark. It could be a scary question mark, or it could be a challenging question mark, isn't it?
Yes.
Don't you ever miss life that you had in New York? The
No.
clean roads, the penthouse, whatever it is.
Strangely, because I maintained a lot of my contacts, and now that I have a PhD in women's studies, I go off and I'm a visiting professor in 2 universities. I go back to the United States 3 times a year.
That's good.
And I pass through New York. I see my friends that I knew from 27, 30 years ago. They haven't evolved
Moved.
at all.
They
They
haven't
haven't
moved.
moved. They're stuck in time. They're still talking about the latest salwar suit that they bought from India, or this piece of jewelry. But I want to talk to them about architecture. I've been to Florence. I've been to St. Petersburg. I've been to Barcelona. I've been, wherever I've been
Even
to.
there, they'll talk about what shopping did you do there.
Yeah. So I feel I've seen so much of the world, and I've moved away from that $1 million mansion kind of life that I had.
Yes.
So I think I enjoy New York in its small bursts. My friends, when I come there, they pamper me, they take me out. I enjoy that city for 4, 5, 6, 7 days, and I come back home.
And eat in all those lovely restaurants.
Whatever it is, there's something always happening in New York City. I don't think so. I don't miss it, because New York has also changed. It's become so gentrified. It has lost its innovative edge. And America, and that city, when you see beggars on Madison Avenue panhandling, and then you know that it's a country
Things have
that is at the moment in trouble. I don't have plans, Chaya.
They just
I just
happen
have
on their
immediate, just small things. I have a major international conference I'm doing in Madras, Chennai in December. It's
All
about
related to dance.
It's called Purush, the Global Dancing Male.
Oh,
it will
okay.
focus on men in dance and theatre. It has have academic discussions about the topic. We're going to discuss male sexuality because a lot of dancers in this country are not able to express their alternate sexuality for fear of all kinds of social and family recriminations. And there are lots of other topics that we're going to talk about. The evolution of male gurus and female dancers. Strivesham, which is men donning the garb of women.
This is something like a ballet kind of a thing, is it?
No,
Or
it's a 5-day
seminars and
event,
conference.
seminars and evening
Oh,
performances.
okay,
Yes.
okay.
Yes, it will happen in December in Madras.
In
It's
Chennai.
called Purush, the Global Dancing Male. And you will, listeners, if anybody wants, can just log on to the website on nartaki.com
Nartaki.com, okay.
and Nartaki with an H, and you'll be able to get information and more details.
About that. You're doing all this only in Chennai, or is it spread all over India?
No, I'm very happy to do it in Madras. I'm not looking to globalize things because right now we're at a corporate funding situation where there's you're either funding Bollywood type and large entertainment events where you can also have alcohol and everything mixed in that, or you're having the pure, you're having what we call classical music and dance that has now been appropriated by the temples and the religious groups for that fundraising to build one more temple. So I object to both these spaces being appropriated because there is this in-between space for the inquiry and the, it's really interesting things for which there are no sponsors. So we are going through some challenging times as well.
To get the sponsors
so
for
I
that.
think it's enough to keep it in a city where I know the people, I know the audience, and I have the infrastructure.
Yeah. Do you find a lot of younger people showing interest in the art?
There are a lot of people who are learning classical music and dance.
Correct.
But they're learning only wanting to perform. So there is a glut. There are too many performers and too few opportunities, which is why then there is corruption sets in, and now performing opportunities are up for sale. There are the slots. You pay 10,000, you get this. You pay 40,000, you get this. So it's up for sale.
Even the well-known dancers?
Not well-known dancers.
It's for these upcoming.
Yes, but if you have the money, you want to pay, then you find yourself in this prestigious festival.
Okay, so you pay and can participate in a festival. That's okay. You're getting a platform. You're getting audience.
But if the organizers put that back to improving infrastructure, I wouldn't mind. But the infrastructure, at least in my hometown, is really substandard.
Everywhere.
Quality of the audio, quality of the stage, quality of the green rooms, quality of the wings, dirty, dusty, chairs are broken. They will definitely, if you wear a nice sari, it's not going to be that nice anymore. Access to, we don't have anything for special needs. Our auditoriums are just not equipped. Nobody can come up on a wheelchair. There are no ramps.
Totally, yeah. See, these are the kind of things you grew up with as a professional in the United States.
You couldn't build an auditorium if you didn't have access.
Particular things.
Yes.
So don't you miss all that here?
No, I think that one must have hope. One must have hope for our country.
Anita, you still have hope?
Absolutely. Otherwise, I will not be an artist. Otherwise, I would have given up a long time ago.
You haven't ever thought of entering politics?
No. Because today, it's almost dangerous to do that.
True.
It's
Actually,
become
it is
dangerous.
dangerous for your family.
Dangerous. Really
Isn't it?
dangerous. Yes.
Yeah.
Dangerous.
You could probably fight it out or whatever.
What about my
kids? But the vulnerable ones will be your children.
Yes.
It's such a pleasure having you in this
My
studio,
pleasure too,
Anita.
Chaya.
There is so much more to talk about, but then like you said, the 7-minute attention deficiency, we've already crossed that about.
You've given me more than God.
Yeah. Bye-bye.